Hello and welcome back to another YouTube video. So today I'm going to be doing the 14.2 top lane tier list, but I'm going to be beginning from kind of scratch at this point, as there were a lot of changes from 14.1, 14.1B. We've had a hot patch from 14.2 already, so I kind of just want to cover things. Alongside that, we've had all the rune shard changes, which is pretty important. No longer having resist as an option, only having flat health or flat health, tenacity, scaling HP, or scaling HP, adaptive, and movement speed for two of the options now. It's pretty important, as a lot of champions can really abuse this, and some champions are definitely nerfed a bit by these options. So let's cover them. As always, if you enjoy the content, like, subscribe, and let's get into it. So to begin with, Teemo did receive a hotfix buff on 14.2B. In fact, I'm honestly going to change the name of this to 14.2B, as it's kind of deceptive as being 14.2. The main thing here is his E damage went back up. He lost the 5% AP ratio. It got returned alongside a 0 to 8 scaler of flat damage. The main thing is, though, he did lose the RCD going into this patch, which is is more important than the E on hit. He should be sat around the A/B tier. I wouldn't really be that worried about the champion unless you are playing the likes of Camille, who did get buffed this patch. Ornn is going to be in my A tier, so Ornn definitely not doing as well as a lot of the other tanks, not doing too poorly. Being able to dish out upgrades is really important and makes him very strong later on into the game. Alongside all of that, a lot of the tank options are definitely more tailored towards scaling. I would really recommend skipping full either Sunfires or Hollow Radiance at the moment. That's also pretty important, as Jackshow is really powerful to have as a second option. Picking up something like a Balmy Cinder, having like full boots or some sort of component into your laner, depending on what the matchup is, and then being able to power your Jackshow so you have it upgraded by level 13 makes this champion good. And as long as you're going down that route, consider him a strong A tier pick. Akshan going to be in my A tier as well, I believe. I have put this champion here as he is in a fine spot. He's one of the better top laner options at the moment. This is staying, he's gone down a tier from last time. I believe that the option to have health doesn't really benefit him as much as the armor or magic resist as before, as he was stronger with those early game options. Scaling options just aren't as optimal on him. This champion is very much tailored towards 1/2 items, having like the Kraken or the Bork, having your second item, whether it's like Voltaic Cyclosword, stuff like this. But yeah, still a solid A tier pick. Aatrox is going to be in my S plus tier, so Aatrox is in a really good spot at the moment. Probably the best go-to top laner. If you are competent on this champion, then you can gain a lot of LP from him. He beats most matchups. You do have to be careful about certain champions that can kind of like either stat check you or do have a good time into your W, making it harder to land your Qs, stuff like this. Teemo, if you build Swifties on him, can be a slight answer. I know that much, but still a very strong pick at the moment. Zac is probably the best niche go-to pick at the moment. He's sat at something like a 57% win rate. Obviously, this is inflated by the fact that he is mostly played by one-tricks. However, with the health stat shard, both the scaling and the flat one being strong options on him, as well as having that hotfix buff on 14.1B, makes this champion really strong at the moment. Picking up something like a Barmies into some of the other tank options really benefits this champion. Having access to a large health pool as well. Yeah, I mean, not as many tank killing options. That's another really important one. Yeah, Zac, really strong option at the moment. Definitely the best go-to tank and niche pick within the game. Darius, I'm actually just going to drag out, is going to also be my S plus tier. So Darius did get buffed this patch, having more shred on the E. Alongside that, having Q buffs, the Q gaining more healing on it by 2%, and then going up to 45%, I believe, if you hit on all targets. Alongside this, Stridebreaker also did get buffed. Stridebreaker is really valuable for this champion because he does really value the cripple on it, alongside the stat line being decent for him. Yeah, overall, Darius, really strong at the moment, really impressive lane bully. Able to kill tanks relatively nicely with the E-Shred. Definitely a solid option. The go-to build would still be Trinity into Stridebreaker. I wouldn't really recommend Stridebreaker first unless you are very much reliant on that cripple to really kill your laner. In some cases, maybe like a Vayne or a ranged champion, which do tend to be the answers into Darius. Mordekaiser is going to wrap up the S+ tier. So Mordekaiser is in a really good spot at the moment, really abusing a lot of the items, values the fact that health is now in the stat shards, has the scaling HP on his W, can go opt into things like Riftmaker if he needs. Overall, yeah, Trump's in a really strong spot at the moment. Definitely consider picking him up. He does beat out most tanks, and beats out most things, to be honest. Once again, like Darius, the main counter to Mord is playing ranged options, where Vayne comes in. So Vayne is going to be my S tier, kind of leading the way almost. Just a solid anti-meta answer at the moment. People hate Vayne. Fleet, Swifties just makes it giga obnoxious to play against. Once you have that Stormrazor completion as well, you cannot catch this champion. Can be abused by ganks. Of course, if she is running Flash Ghost, then it does make her very vulnerable if she does lose both those summoner spells. But for the most part, a great anti-meta option at the moment. Definitely consider picking her up if you hate yourself. Yeah, there you go. So moving on, Trundle is going to also be in my S tier. So Trundle was in my S+ tier beforehand. He's still a very strong option. In fact, Trinity Force and Hullbreaker are great items for him. He loves Ravenous as an option as well. All these items just really nice on him. Gives him a lot of power, gives him a lot of split push potential. Can rotate for Void Grubs if he needs to. Overall, just in a very good spot at the moment. Quinn is going to be in my A tier. So Quinn, not doing amazingly, definitely a bit down from last patch where I did have her in the S tier, but still, once again, not a bad option. Can go some of the marksman items, can go some of the lethality options, and finds herself as a decent A tier option. Rengar. So Rengar is someone I want to talk about because Rengar is taking over some of the regions really well. The likes of China almost permanently ban Rengar because he is so oppressive over there. In the West, he doesn't perform as well. However, if you're very strong at playing this champion, I would very much recommend him as a good like S+ tier option. Within the top lane, he is amazing. He can beat out most laners if you are really strong at piloting the champion. If you don't play Rengar, wouldn't recommend it. Just avoid this champion. He's very hard to pilot, and very different playstyle to a lot of the champions within the top lane, where a lot of them are almost stat checky by nature. Rengar very much relies on being able to combo correctly, being able to utilize the bushes, and just different playstyle mechanics, which, I mean, if you've learned them, great. Go ahead, play this champion. He's really strong. If not, I'd recommend avoiding him. He can still struggle into tanks, obviously, but if you're able to get those advantages and just push tanks out the game, then yeah, he's a really strong option. Poppy is also going to be my S tier. So Poppy is insane at the moment. She is so good into some of the mobility options, can shut down champions completely. If you're playing the likes of Cassante into Poppy, it's almost just an insta-win matchup for you. And overall, tanks being relatively good at the moment. I wouldn't call it a tank meta, but a lot of the tanks do have really solid options, especially if you're itemizing them correctly into the games which you are playing them in. Then yes, they are very solid options. Poppy does find herself within the S tier. Alongside Poppy though, Fiora and Riven, both really powerful options. I undervalued them last patch. I put them both in the A tier, but now that people have started itemizing correctly and building the champs correctly, both are doing really well. Fiora especially really benefited from health, whereas a lot of other champions just naturally struggle. Well, I mean, for the most part, champions did just get more tanky. Fiora stayed relatively similar, as a lot of her damage is just maximum health true damage. So she does the same amount of damage, whereas a lot of other champions have to take longer to kill the targets. So yeah, she's really benefiting from that, finds herself nicely within the S tier. Singed is a bit down from my S+ tier, so was a solid S+ option last patch. Did receive the hotfix nerf, which has over time taken him down to the S tier. Still a great option though. If you can pilot Singed well, still really solid to play at the moment. Azir also going to be my S tier. So Azir is a bit more of a niche one. Didn't put him here last time. It's just not enough people play him. But I can't overstate enough how valuable this champion is in certain games. He is a great AP option, and if you were looking for a bit of range scaling, he is there. He's amazing. Fleet, Nash's Tooth, both are incredible things you can run on him. Just makes him giga hard to push out of lane and really, really powerful later on into the game. You can also sometimes opt into Lich Bane. I know that is sometimes what people like as a second option. It is being nerfed next patch though, just be aware. But yeah, still a very strong S tier option. Alongside that, Kled, once again, really good. He's always really good. They tend to like him being a strong option. He's not too popular, so I guess it's not as harmful as some of the other champions. But yeah, Kled, really solid option. Good items. Can go things like the Titanic. I believe Sundered Sky also works quite nicely on him. Yeah, there are options there. Maokai, also going to be in the S tier. So Maokai is a very solid tank option at the moment. Having access to more health is great for Maokai. His healing is based on his maximum health on the passive. Alongside that, his E lasts for a longer duration. He just values health in general as he's a tank. Yeah, he's doing great. So would really recommend playing Maokai at the moment if you're looking for another tank option. Cassiopeia got a bit hit this patch, not as powerful. People oftentimes did run MR into Cassiopeia, and she doesn't value the health as much as some of the other champions, but she's alright. Still a very solid S tier option, kites up most for top lane. Taking things like Rylai, Archangels, Cosmic Drive, these 3 items really powerful on her. Of course, Roa, also really important on this champion, can really easily abuse Eternity passive on that. So yeah, Roa, Seraphs, yeah, solid options there. Still a really good champion. Gwen, really strong into most tanks. I mean, Gwen needs no introduction, was really powerful in 14.1, very over after in 14.1B, buffed her back in 14.2, and once again has found herself in the S tier. So moving on, Tahm Kench and Urgot, my 2 mains this season. I love these 2 champions, they're great fun to play. They are really strong options, close to the S tier, but as they're a bit more low elo skewed, I would be kind of hesitant with considering them S tier options. Tahm Kench, great at being a solid mid-game champion. Once you have your heart still, you can beat out most top laners. I would recommend banning Mordekaiser though, as that champion can just completely shit on you at all times in the game. Past that, still very strong option though. Yeah, definitely recommend playing Tahm Kench. Yeah, Heartsteel, Balmy Cinder, and then you can itemize into most of the tank options. For Urgot's case, both Lethality and Bruise Urgot are strong options. Being able to itemize into both makes him an S tier option. However, just individually, I'd consider him more of an A tier pick. For the tank kind of variation, you want to be picking up things like Cleaver, Starrick, Jackshow. Makes for a really strong 3 item core. For Lethality, Yomu's Opportunity, even Hubris certain times can be really strong on him, and that makes him really, really strong at just being a one-shot champion. Yeah, lots of power there. Solid A tier picks. Mundo is also going to be in the A tier, so Mundo, very simple to pilot champion, really solid with the health changes, as having access to more health is great for this champion. He has, for the most part, he has an 80 scaling health storage within his kit, which is great. So yeah, a lot better this patch. Definitely a solid option. Malphite is going to be in my A tier, so Malphite lost access to both armor shards, which, I mean, sucks for him. Having access to health isn't too bad, so he's not, like, really heavily nerfed, but yeah, not as strong as last patch, but still a solid option. If you need an armor tank, he is usually your best go-to. Moving on, so Garen is going to be my tier. Garen got buffed this patch, alongside that Stradebreaker also got buffed, and he's performing better with it. So yeah, solid A tier option, gone up from the C tier, where he was really underperforming last patch. In fact, I'm going to cover Alawi as well. So Alawi is going to be on my B tier, very close to being an A tier option, just not performing to that level yet. She is receiving changes next patch, which I will imagine push up towards the S plus tier, where she's getting 125 range on her tentacles. But yeah, for the most part, solid B tier option. The buffs did really help her, and yeah, good pick. Moving on, so Cassante is going to be in my A tier. Cassante is a very solid, skillful tank option. If you're really good at piloting this champion, then yes, he's close to the S tier. If you're not so great, and you haven't really put the games in, close to B tier. Whereas like some of the other tank options are a bit more simple, he's definitely on the harder kind of side, but yeah, still a solid A tier option. Karma, everyone's talking about Karma. I hate people who are just first timing this champion in ranked. It really pisses me off, because the amount of people I've seen who have just run it down on either side is kind of depressing. She is a good pick, like, don't get me wrong, champion is in a very solid spot at the moment. Malignance is great. You can also itemize things like Frozen Heart if you're playing a more tanky variation, but please do not first time this champion in ranked. She is not the hardest champ to play, obviously, but as always with most champions, if you first time them, that is your learning game, and you will tend to just run it down. So I would recommend playing this champion, just not first timing it in ranked. Swain, solid A tier option. So Swain is a new addition. I believe Swain is fine. Like, I play Swain as my main mid option. He struggles after 2 items. This is not as much, well, wasn't as much of a problem last season when Zhonya's was a bit cheaper and he really spiked with Zhonya's. But this season, like your Rylai, Liandry, Malignant's core is fine. Yeah, like having Rylai and Liandry is the main thing here. Malignant's, for the most part, just feels kind of shit as an item. I know there are certain champions which are great at abusing it. Karma, Teemo, obviously being 2 main ones here. But it doesn't feel as great on Swain, which is why oftentimes you go Lost Chapter and then you just skip Malignance and you go like Liandry, Rylai. There are options there. Obviously, Airy, Conqueror, Phase Rush, all very solid on this champion. Definitely pick depending on game. But yeah, solid A tier pick. Jax is also going to be my A tier. So Jax is honestly close to the B tier. He received large nerfs this patch towards his E. People were kind of concerned about the fact that he got access to a bit more split push potential though with his W and his ultimate. However, that hasn't really, I mean, it hasn't anywhere near kind of offset the nerfs, and he's definitely found himself in a weaker spot this patch. Jax has more these days been more tailored towards being an early game champion, which I don't believe Riot want to hold up as he becomes very oppressive when he's early game. His E has very little counterplay to it against most champions, which is very scary for an early game champion, and I mean has been very scary. This champ's been meta for a while now, and it's good to see that he's been finally nerfed. Gangplank is going to be my A tier. So Gangplank performing relatively well at the moment. I know some people have been playing APGP with like a Lichbane, Malignance, Liandry kind of build, and it's been working relatively well. Like, that is a solid option these days on Gangplank. However, for the most part, I will just recommend the Essence Reaver, Collector, Navori build as being your standard core. Jace is going to be my B tier. So Jace just hasn't done as well with the new item system as a lot of other champions. Yeah, actually, you know what? I'm going to put Jace in C tier. I think this champ's kind of bait at the moment. I wouldn't recommend playing Jace. Udyr is going to be my A tier. So Udyr is, well, considered the best top laner in pro play at the moment. I believe he is the number 1 pick. Within solo queue, however, I would only really recommend him as like an A tier pick. He's a solid tank option. If you're looking for a good AP tank, Udyr is a good option there. You can, of course, go AD in certain games. The Trinity Force into like some of the other options are solid on him. Twisted Fate, I'm going to actually have to go a bit quicker. This video is going to be a hella long, boy. So yeah, Twisted Fate, this is the crit variation of Twisted Fate. The only reason I've really added him on, he is like a B tier option. It's not too bad. People are obviously learning as they go along. I haven't done the research into the build, so I can't really tell you what the specific builds are, but I have played against it. The ability to insta auto W is really obnoxious, definitely, and very like a lot of power budget this patch. But yeah, the on-hit builds seem to be fine. If anything, slightly underpowered, but as people like itemize correctly on him and optimize those builds, I could see him rising up towards the A tier. Olaf is going to be my A tier. So Olaf is doing slightly better this patch compared to last one. I did have him in the B tier as like a high B tier option. I think he's more of a low A tier option, if anything, this patch. Sejuani is going to be my B tier. So Sejuani top doesn't really see play that much anymore, but as a option of a flex pick, I am going to put it in the B tier, as it's not the worst pick in the world and she can abuse some of the tank items. Volibear is going to be in my B tier as a low option. Volibear just isn't doing great at the moment. Unless you turbo feed him early, which I have made this mistake already, like within the last 15 days of the new season, he doesn't do too well. This, of course, like the main build obviously is like the Nash's Riftmaker variation. You can sometimes slot in like an Iceborne and go like a tanky variation as well. But yeah, for the most part, both tank and AP Volibear are kind of underperforming at the moment. Tryndamere going to be my B tier. So Tryndamere just isn't performing to the same level as he was the prior patch. Just in general last season, he finds himself more within the B tier. So Rumble also did get hotfix buffed. Well, he got nerfed and then hotfix buffed in 14.2B. It has put him in a better spot. However, I'm going to be hesitant with putting him in the tier above, as we don't really know the scope of the changes as it was very recently. So yeah, more like a B/A tier option there for Rumble. Nah gonna be within my B tier. Nah just not performing as well as some of the other champs this patch. It kind of falls below average, which is why he's gonna be in my B tier. Same goes for Silas. He's more of a not really same goes for Silas. Silas is more of a counter pick option. You only really play him in the top lane if you're able to pick out really good ultimates within the game. Otherwise, I wouldn't really recommend playing this champion. Only really play him when you have like access to things like Malphite Ultimate. Pantheon, going to be within the beta. Pantheon just isn't performing great this season. He doesn't have the same power with the builds as he did last season. Like, last season, Pantheon was like an S plus tier option. He was really good. But like things like Eclipse and Shogun just don't perform to the same level, which is why he's going to be in the beta. Sion is also going to be within the beta. So Sion just also isn't performing as well this season. He tends to struggle against a lot of the options within the meta, whereas a lot of the other tank picks are able to abuse certain things, like some of the items and stuff. Sion just doesn't really have that. He's still a solid tank option, and honestly, like, he kind of falls alongside Cho'Gath. Sion and Cho'Gath both kind of pair together as being solid options, but just not as valuable as some of the other tank picks. Moving on, so Xin Zhao top. I don't know why I have him here. I believe someone told me that like they'd seen a couple of Xin Zhao tops. I'm going to put him in the C tier. It's a niche pick, and I don't believe Xin Zhao top is a great option. Of course, if someone thinks he is, then, I mean, comment down below. But like, for the most part, Xin Zhao top, very early game skewed. If it's anything like old Xin Zhao, then that is where he'll kind of land. He's a solid lane bully. If that's what you're looking for, then he's a champion, but I'm going to put Renekton also here, as Renekton just isn't performing very well at the moment. He still sees pro play, which shocks me, because a lot of the champions just answer him at the moment, but for the point and click CC, that is the main value here. Make sure you're W maxing second. That is kind of my main advice with this pick. Shen got the 4 AD buff this patch, and he's solid, a good A tier pick. Access to things like Titanic is really nice for him. He really values the wave clear. Gragas also going to be my A tier, so Gragas performing a lot better with the ult buffs and the durability pass this patch. I believe both AP and tank variations of Gragas are doing fine. Nasus going to be within my B tier, so Nasus just not performing as well this patch. Still has access to things like Trinity Force and Frozen Heart, but losing Divine Sundara and Frozen Heart being a bit more expensive this patch definitely does hurt the champion, so he finds himself more within the B tier. Rammus lost access to double armor shards, so he finds himself within the B tier. Yorick is terrible. Yeah, in the C tier. Aurelia is going to be within my A tier. So Aurelia not doing too badly, has access to things like Bork and Wit's End. Experimental Hexplate I know is a solid option on her. Yeah, solid A tier pick. Yasuo going to be with my B tier. So Yasuo is actually no, I'm being generous. Yasuo is going to be with my C tier. Yasuo and Akali are just for the most part good mid picks. If you're a if you're a mid lane player and you've been autofilled top lane, go ahead. You're probably good at playing these champions if you do play them. If you don't play them, don't first time these champions, or I wouldn't really recommend playing these champions. They do tend to just get abused by most of the boosters and tanks in the top lane. You struggle to kill people within lane. You tend to be outscaled. I just wouldn't really recommend these options. Varus, unless you're Kerberos, don't play this pick. It's kind of niche, and it's just not as good as some of the other lane bullies. It does struggle for the most part. Heimerdinger is going to be my C tier. So Heimerdinger lost the ability to do the Conqueror snapshot turret placements, which he used to be able to do, and he lost a decent amount of power from it. He's more of a C tier pick. He's niche. If anything, like, he's mostly just a support pick. Set is going to be down to my B tier, so Set just not performing as well this patch. He struggles with itemization, and I mean, most Set players do just struggle itemizing their champion correctly, which is just a thing I have to accept at this point. He's more of a B tier pick. I do like Set though. I do hope he gets a couple of buffs. It would be nice. Kennen going to be within the B tier, so Kennen just not performing as well as some of the other champions. Rocket Belt being nerfed, Storm Surge being nerfed, that definitely did hit this champion. Wukong is terrible. He's more of a C tier pick. Same goes for Shyvana, that champ. Yeah, they're both pretty bad. I wouldn't really recommend playing them. Of course, if you are playing them, then Titanic Hydra for Shyvana is probably the optimal playstyle, and then like a tanky variation. For Wukong, more of a Trinity Force Bruise type variation. these champions do just lose to most picks in the top lane at the moment, though. Shyvana in the past was always an answer into tanks. Wukong in the past was more of an early game bully. Neither of them do their kind of like previous jobs as well at the moment, so they're more C tier picks. Vladimir, solid A tier option. Vladimir's great at the moment. Really abuses Riftmaker quite well. Better mid laner, but still a solid top laner as well. Honestly, scaling health shards should be a lot better for him as well. So yeah, solid A tier pick. Kayle going to be down in my A tier, not the S tier pick she used to be. I think they over nerfed her slightly. Of course, Riftmaker being nerfed definitely does hit her as well. Yeah, A tier pick. Not too bad, but not too good. Camille also going to be A tier, so they buffed Camille's health, passive shield, and movement speed of Q. It did a bit. It moved her towards the higher end of the A tier, I should say, if anything. She was in my A tier before. I did slightly overrate her, but yeah, now more of just a solid A tier option. Warwick, I think I overvalued Warwick. I had him in the S tier, but this was like pre-Titanic Hydra nerfs. Now that Titanic Hydra's been nerfed, he's more of an A tier option. He's fine, like a mid A tier option. And Yone is more like a low A tier option. If you're good at piloting Yone, he tends to be really oppressive. If you're bad at piloting Yone, you tend to just feed your laner. That's the main thing. Of course, Kraken Bork, make sure you're picking the right ones in the right games. Bork tends to be solid into health stackers, Kraken tends to be solid into the squishy targets, and then I, Shubu, and you tend to be good to go. Yeah, so those are my thoughts on the top lane tier list. Thank you guys for watching, I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.